The Pennsylvania Association for Retarded Children, PARC, versus Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. On January 7, 1971, a class action lawsuit was filed in the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. 14 families with intellectually disabled children brought the case against the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the State Board of Education, and several school districts. The plaintiffs in the case were represented by the counsel from Pennsylvania Association for Retarded Children, also known as PARC. PARC claimed that certain state laws unconstitutionally denied a free public funded education to children with mental disabilities. They also claimed that several school districts unfairly classified certain students as uneducable and untrainable, and students who did not reach the mental capacity of a 5-year-old by the time they had turned 8 years old were also denied a public education. Deputy Attorney General Edward Weintraub argued on behalf of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania contended that the state was not constitutionally obligated to provide a free public education to all children. They argued that education was a privilege, not a right, and therefore the state could exclude certain children, in this case, children with intellectual disabilities, if it deemed they could not benefit from education in a traditional school setting. The state claimed that children with mental disabilities, specifically those labeled as mentally retarded at the time, could not benefit from a standard public education. They argued that these children were untrainable or uneducable and thus did not belong in public schools. The Commonwealth also maintained that it had the authority to regulate and determine the criteria for school attendance. Under state laws, children who had not reached a certain mental age, typically 5 years old by the age of 8, could be excluded from public education programs. Thomas Gilhol argued the case on behalf of PARC. Gilhol argued that denying children with disabilities access to public education violated the Equal Protection Clause of the U.S. Constitution. All children, regardless of ability, are entitled to the equal protection under the law, and excluding children with disabilities from school was discriminatory and unconstitutional. He also argued that denying education without proper procedure violated the Due Process Clause. Many children were being excluded from public schools without any hearing, evaluation, or opportunity for the families to appeal, which violated their fundamental rights. Gilhol made the case that education is a fundamental right under Pennsylvania law. Since the state provided free public education to most children, it could not arbitrarily deny it to children with disabilities. He challenged the assumption that children with intellectual disabilities were uneducable. He presented evidence and expert testimony that these children could benefit from education, especially when it was tailored to their needs. The court case was overseen by a panel of 3 judges: Circuit Judge Arlen Adams, District Judge Thomas Masterson, District Judge Raymond Broderick. In 1972, the final court decree was issued by Judge Masterson. The court ruled that children with intellectual disabilities are entitled to a free public education, just like other children. Children with disabilities must be placed in a setting that is as close as possible to a regular classroom, appropriate to their individual needs. And parents must be given notice and a chance to challenge decisions about their child's education, establishing due process rights in education. The impact of PARC versus Commonwealth of Pennsylvania on the field of special education has been profound and enduring, laying the foundation for modern special education laws and practices in the United States. It established the right to education for children with disabilities. It led directly to federal legislation, Education for All Handicapped Children Act, now known as IDEA. It reinforced the principle that children should be educated with their non-disabled peers whenever possible, giving us the least restrictive environment, or LRE. It introduced due process protections for families. This case can be described as a cornerstone for education today because it fundamentally reshaped the rights, expectations, and legal framework around the education of students with disabilities. Because of this, we now have FAPE, IEPs, LRE, and procedural safeguards that we use in our classrooms every day. The court findings in PARC versus Commonwealth of Pennsylvania can be integrated into today's classrooms. We as teachers can provide instruction to our students in the least restrictive environment. We can modify materials and instruction in the classroom by using visuals, simplified text, and assistive technology. We can use differentiated instruction to meet diverse learning needs in the classroom. We can also develop and implement IEPs with measurable goals, conduct ongoing assessments, and communicate on a regular basis with the students' parents.